Hello everyone, my name's Katie and I'm a teacher of science in South Manchester, and I would like to show you today a practical task that you can do with your students in the classroom to excite and engage them in some practical science that draws some real links to their subject knowledge and their learning in science. So the title of this experiment is called Using an Indigestion Tablet to Neutralise an Acid, and the aim is to find out which tablet is the most effective in neutralising an acid. So I've got 3 different brands of tablet here. You can use any combination of varying brands, whatever you can sort of get your hands on. And I'm going to show you how to do the practical today, and also how to bring in a range of skills around practical science. So a nice way for students to start this practical is by conducting some research. So they can research what is indigestion, and this will link directly to their learning of the human digestive system. They could research what is in an indigestion tablet, what are the active ingredients, and this will link directly to their knowledge of formulations from chemistry. And of course they can research what is neutralisation, how does the tablet actually work, and that would link to both the human digestive system and to neutralisation and the pH scale. Alongside research, it would be a good opportunity to teach students about referencing. So Harvard referencing, for example, is a key skill that students will need if they are to take A-level science in future, for example, for the practical endorsement, but also for any future A-level and university studies in which they might need referencing skills. Once they've done that, it would be a good chance for students to write a method, potentially. You could give them a range of equipment or a list of equipment for them to use to write a method, or to add a further level of challenge, you could perhaps give a list of equipment including some pieces that they won't need or they shouldn't use for this practical, to add, as I said, that sort of higher level of challenge. It would also be a good opportunity for students to do a risk assessment of this practical. We are using hydrochloric acid as well as glassware, so of course plenty of opportunities to risk assess the varying aspects of this practical. As well as the level of challenge leading up to the practical, in terms of how it's actually done, there are various ways to do it. So I'm going to show you this practical using a burette, which some students might be familiar with and some students might not. It does require quite a high level of skill to use a burette. Our GCSE chemistry students might have already come across burettes when studying titrations, or perhaps they're learning about titrations in a future topic, so it might be nice to bring it in now at this point. Or to simplify this practical for Key Stage 3 or for your class, they could add small volumes using a measuring cylinder, which would then provide an opportunity to sort of compare the 2 methods and discuss use of different pieces of apparatus in terms of accuracy. So students could use measuring cylinders, you could perhaps demo using a burette, and you could compare the 2. So in terms of carrying out the practical, the first steps that students would need to do is to grind the indigestion tablet in a pestle and mortar, which I've pre-done here. So I'm going to just put that into a conical flask. And it's important that we get all of that tablet in there. So after I have poured that in, I'm going to rinse that with distilled water. And again, these are practical skills that students will use again and again, so it's valuable practice. And you can discuss why it's important that all that tablet goes into the conical flask in terms of accuracy, and also the fact that we're comparing, so we need to make sure the full tablet's in there. And then to that flask I'm going to add 25 centimetres cubed roughly of deionized water, which I pre-measured, and then I'm going to add 3 drops of methyl orange. You could use something like phenolphthalein. These are indicators that students should be familiar with at GCSE, but it's also okay if they're not yet. We can just discuss the colour change beforehand. So methyl orange at the moment is yellow. In my burette I have my hydrochloric acid. It could be a good idea before the practical to just do a trial run with your acid, just to make sure that the concentration is appropriate for the sort of readings we want students to get. However, that could be part of the investigation for students. So once we have our acid in our burette, students will add using a funnel, ensure that they take the funnel out because that can impact their reading. And we're going to start adding the acid just as we would a titration. At first we can do that 1 or 2 centimetres cubed at a time. make sure we swirl that flask. And we can see already my indicator beginning to change colour, and we want to keep going until our indicator changes colour and stays that way for a minute. This also provides a valuable chance to discuss with students why it's important that we approach the endpoint slowly. So why, as we sort of see that colour change stick around for longer and longer, why we should add the acid in small volumes until eventually we want to be adding drop by drop. So again, linking to accuracy and what impact that has on any results and any conclusions that we might make. You can also see that I've placed a white tile under here, just as we would in a titration, to make that colour change nice and obvious. Again, we want to keep going until our colour change sticks around for a minute. So I'm very close to the end point now, so I'm going to add just a drop. So adding drop by drop until we see that colour change. So now that my indicator has changed colour, oh, not quite, add another drop, oops. So now that my indicator has changed colour, I now know that students can now deduce that the volume of acid that was used is the volume of acid that that tablet was able to neutralise. So we no longer have a neutral solution because our indicator is a different